start to get towards this game and talk about the draft. Obviously, this is going to be the first draft we see for update 2.8, so let's talk about some of the more prioritized picks. We already talked earlier today about more aggressive early jungle picks. What is the expectation? Zora, we'll start with you. What are you expecting to see as we get into this draft?
I'm expecting a lot of prioritization. One, on the roamers. As we can see, Catherine, the first ban goes through. Catherine, Grace, Lyra still top 3 roamers, but there's a lot of prioritization on last 2. Finn might show up. And other than that, for Mouz Sports, they're going to need to get Doom on a comfortable character so that he can shine the way he can.
Yeah, and you're talking about Finn there. That's something we've seen in Challengers this past week, was the fact that Finn was heavily prioritized by a lot of teams. So we'll see if that carries over into the pro play, but it looks like it will be a Lance first pick for the side of Mouz Sports. So again, Captain Focused is the name of the game right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that in the draft, that's historically been the case in the Vainglory8 as well. Captains are just so influential on the game.
And Lance is not only a good pick for Mouz Sports, but that takes it away from Fnatic. Netatuleta is one of the best Lances in Europe. It's something that everyone knows. So let's see what Fnatic goes for. It's Finn. We just mentioned him. Yep. He shows up. So far, a lot of prioritization on roamers, though. No carries. Vox still open. CP Idris is still open. A lot of things still on the table.
Yeah, we got to the 3rd ban, the 5th lock-in of the entire draft. It's finally something that's not a captain coming up through. Blackfeather taken off the board. Now, Mouz Sports, they have to decide what they want to deny from Fnatic here.
Yeah, and that's going to be a difficult choice because, again, there are so many strong picks still left. They take the Celeste away, so Scarf is still available. So is the Idris. I would expect Fnatic to maybe lean a bit more towards the Scarf pickup, just because that's one that both Palmatoro and TechnoJJ can play exceptionally well, and you don't necessarily want to be going with the Idris into a Lance.
I mean, Vox is also open. That's something we know TechnoJJ likes to play as well.
He likes to play him a lot, but Vox is perhaps not the strongest of laners right now in this update. One thing that's very interesting is that Kestrel is still open. We know Doom is such an incredible CP Kestrel jungler, although she's a little bit weaker this update, so I'm interested to see if they're going to go for it or not.
Yeah, the Scarf will be locked in the end for Fnatic. That's something we've seen them play time and time again. Historically, it's been Palmatoro. Obviously, Scarf, it's kind of in flux where you play him on the map right now, so it's almost a flex pick to some extent as well. Now, Mouz Sports, they've got a double pick on their hands.
Yeah, I would like to see the Scarf in the jungle right now, just because, again, with the changes to the with the removal of Halcyon potions, it's very difficult to stay in the lane if you get poked at all as a Scarf. So you want to put him in the jungle where he can at least stick around and be the one that's making the more aggressive moves. Vox is going to come out here, though. I think this is part of it, though, because Vox is one of the heroes that can easily start.
I wonder if Fortress is going to come out here. This is a composition that I've seen a few European teams play, Vox, Lance, and Fortress. I wonder if that's what is going to be happening. But on the Fnatic side, while they have Scarf and Finn, these are very extremely strong characters late game. They don't have a lot of early game, and Vox and Lance are known for how hard they can push in the lane and apply a lot of pressure. Good thing for Fnatic, they have the junglers for last pick, so they can counter pick whatever Mouz Sports ends up picking here.
Yeah, I mean, they've already managed to get one counter pick in with the Finn versus Lance kind of situation. We'll see where Mouz are going to go for this final pick to round out their composition. I'm curious about the potential Fortress coming through there because, you know, typically Lance and Fortress have both been known as those captain roles. What is this composition? What do you expect to see coming out from this?
Jungle Fortress, most likely, just so you have that crystal power for coming through, because you're not going to be running a CP Vox generally at the current update, but the CP Fortress, you can apply so much pressure early on. This is actually very similar to what used to be the old school, like, super aggressive early game composition. Fortress just allows you to be so aggressive and can provide a little bit of lifesteal to your team as well. So, you know, you get that anywhere where you can buy a little bit of sustain, I think gives a team a really big edge.
If it is going to be a CP Fortress in the jungle, Mouz Sports going to be able to scale fairly easily just because we mentioned Fnatic doesn't have a strong early game. The Cruel, though, that's a character that can apply a lot of pressure early game, both going into the jungle dueling the Fortress easily, and when he hits his level 6, he can go up to lane, he can get a gank with his ultimate. I like Fnatic's draft. I like Mouz Sports' draft. I think it's going to come down to whoever plays it better. Mouz Sports have to scale, but Fnatic got a pretty good scaling comp too. It's going to be up to execution, really, in my opinion.
I have to ask about the Crow pick a little bit, just because typically, when you're going against a Cruel, you want mortal wounds, right? But they have a Vox and a Fortress. That's a lot of mortal wounds on this side of Mouz. Is that going to be an issue for this Cruel pick?
I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue because the Cruel pick is mostly just to shore up their early game, and then late game is just going to be the Finn and the Scarf that take over. So, once the mortal wounds really start to become an issue, that's when all of a sudden the Scarf becomes the main threat instead of the Cruel, and the Cruel is just there to apply those weakness stacks. So I think Fnatic has a really well-rounded draft, and that's what I really like about it, is the fact that they have the early game strength, and then they switch off who's going to be the focus in the late game.
All right, I have to ask Zoro, we've been talking about this early game pressure, we've been talking about control of the middle of the map being so important at the early stages of the game. Does either team have an advantage for those early skirmishes?
I would say so, but it's going to be a lot about applying the lane pressure to get jungle advantage with it. If Fortress is not going to be able to go into the jungle alone and duel Cruel, it's going to have to be through lane.
All right, we'll see if they can pull that one off. It's time to get into the first game of the autumn 2017 season. It's time to kick things off with a bang. It's Mouse Sports going up for Fnatic. Let's get into game number 1.
Thank you very much, Munchables. What an exciting matchup we have here today. Mouse versus Fnatic, the 2nd seed versus the 3rd seed of the Summer Live Championship. And joined today is one of our new talent, Source. Welcome to the Vainglory caster team.
Glad to be here and glad to be into our first game.
Yeah, this is going to be an exciting one here. Mouse bringing on Tricky, a player of ups and downs, but a lot of talent nonetheless. And I think one of the major criticisms of Mouse during the summer season was that Atfuls wasn't as dynamic as Mouse needed him to be. Let's see what they can pull off here as Netala in lane. He's going to be able to resist the Impale and cannot be stopped, but does take a huge amount of damage. Palmatoro will come in just to love tap Mouse to say, hey, we see you there. We'll have to see how either of these teams can get early objectives, early advantages. For Fnatic, they've got a really good late game scaling composition, but Mouse, they've got this major skirmishing composition.
Yeah, and just starting things off, we had Mouse go with the triple jungle, Fnatic went with the double jungle. So you ended up with interesting early level 2 spike for Fnatic, where pretty much everybody was ready to fight, and they had 2 members at level 2. So we're already starting to see a little bit of how this jungle farm and all of the golden experience is going to play out in 2.8.
And that's the major thing here, is that we are playing on 2.8, the first of the competitive for North America and Europe here in the Vainglory8. Have to see what rises, what falls. We got a bit of a preview, I think, as to what the meta may be at the Unified Live Championships in Los Angeles earlier on this month. I feel like the meta may be fairly similar, but of course there are little things, little nuggets that I think are going to rise with the cracks.
Yeah, definitely the changes as to sustain, how that's going to affect some of the drafts, and how that's going to affect how team fights go once we start to get towards the middle portion of the game, fountains start coming out, and you see how much damage is actually going to stick to a given character. And, I mean, so far both teams playing fairly safe. Nobody wants to really overcommit because you just don't have potions anymore.
The Healing Flask taking on over. It does provide a lot of burst healing, but a very long cooldown. The major thing I think the Healing Flask offers that maybe some people overlook is actually the barrier that it gives the player when they pop it, allowing them to predict when they're about to take a bit of burst damage and then heal through the subsequent damage that comes through.
Yeah, and for the moment, I'm surprised that I'm the Doom. I don't know if that's a double weapon power composition yet. Might have just been picking up a little bit of weapon power for that early jungle capability to just get through some of those camps before switching over to maybe a little bit more of an on-hit or CP build. But for the moment, doesn't look like we're going to get an idea of what that build looks like for a little while. And just all this lane pressure is interesting because of how much value you get out of those jungle camps. I'm surprised that the teams are willing to put that many members towards the lane of the game.
Yeah, just looking for early ganks, it seems, for both these teams. Palmatoro just up in this lane. Top bush hasn't been spotted. Justman currently just trying to fade out, but it will be Palmatoro knocked back. I'm the Doom sitting on a huge amount of gold and the jungle shop about to spawn, so I suspect that I'm the Doom will make his way to purchase up very shortly, and we'll get an idea of that build that he's going towards. Almost certainly a CP build. I expect it's almost not in question. Another thing that's really interesting to talk about, and maybe people don't know, is that Mouz, they brought on Tricky here, which is I would say an upgrade for their carry position, but they've also brought on Physics, who's well known for her drafting capabilities for Cloud9. She's actually an official substitute, and if Just Man was to fall out, even I'm the Doom, she's prepared to step in as a jungle or captain substitute. So not only have they brought on, you know, fantastic drafting capability in Physics, but also a player that can substitute for those positions.
Yeah, and you know, a little bit more on Tricky. You put him on a Vox, it's going to be, you know, a reasonably mechanical character going up in the first game up against Fnatic. That's going to be a solid test of, you know, how well he handles, you know, just the pressure of the game, and then also going into the rest of the series. If this, you know, if he's under pressure during this match, if it doesn't go that well for Mouz, how well he's going to rally back. And that's, you know, that's going to be a new dynamic within the team as to how they communicate through that and how they work through any possible issues. Also, how they keep themselves from getting too overconfident, because often with new teams, you start feeling really, really good. You start making over-aggressive plays. You start doing, you know, more than you're capable of at the start, just because it's, you know, it's kind of that honeymoon phase.
But we do get a bit of a window into what Mouz are preparing for this game. Double tension bow purchased here by I'm the Doom, as well as Tricky. I'm the Doom now going to be working towards what looks like an aftershock, so going for an on-hit build here, where he just relies on the major amount of burst that he gets off that first auto attack.
Yeah, also, you know, Tricky going with that tension bow, so probably seeing, well, no, has picked up a little bit of crit. So maybe taking the early tension bow for some damage is going to work into the Tyrant's monocle, or
looks
maybe
like it might even be a tornado
speed.
trigger. Yeah, it's very interesting. 2.8 Vox. Especially after the Poison Shiv nerfs in 2.7. Vox's build has been up in question, people really wondering what's the best build, what's the most meta build, what's great for the damage output. So maybe something a little bit new, something unheard of here from Tricky. The Tension Bow definitely raising some question marks in my mind, but perhaps a little bit too early to really understand exactly. From what Mouz want to do, they want to rush on in and try and get on top of that Scarf, so perhaps they're just relying on heavy burst damage. Either way, here they come. Gonna get the attacker pack popped. They can't really find an entrance. Net-to-let on this Finn provides a bit of an issue for Mouz diving deep onto the backline.
Yeah, I think I'm the Doom was hoping to be able to walk through that bush, then use attack of the pack, you know, and start looking for the opponents, use that, you know, that initial ultimate and try and make that kind of pick. And maybe that's why they went with the double tension bow, look for that mid-game fight and kind of spiral things out of control from there. But they don't really get that much, and that's a lot of pressure onto that first turret.
Yeah, no, the first turret taking significantly more damage as its health was reduced. It also had its gold reduced as well, now offers 200 per member. Fnatic doing their best to keep Just Man back, but he pops that healing blast so he can be involved in the fight a little bit longer, has the Fountain, which means the life spring is ticking away, giving him increased health regen. Currently, Mouz haven't been able to find an entrance onto Techno JJ, which means that they can't really pressure anything. If Net-to-let and Palmatoro are spending time in the lane to keep this Scarf alive, then Techno JJ is getting increased gold and able to scale towards perhaps a 4 or indefinitely a 4 damage item build. He's going towards a chronograph next, and then we'll be finishing a broken myth afterwards.
Yeah, and I mean, already 2 items into that build. We're about 8 minutes into the game. There's basically been this, you know, heavy stalemate, and Tricky is going for a heavy crit build, so probably Tyrant's Monocle next, and I guess a 4 damage build going into, I hope, what'll be a Sorrow Blade later to kind of round out that damage and make those crits, you know, actually stick.
Could also be a breaking point because of Vox's fantastic attack speed. You can kind of substitute a Sorrow Blade if you get those stacks on the breaking points. So it'd be very interesting to see what Tricky does decide to do, but definitely a crit-focused build. Huge pull. Oh, the stun afterwards. First blood. Gonna go over to Techno JJ, and that's the wombo combo Fnatic wanted.
Yeah, perfect force accord, and that's gonna start to set the pace of things now that you know, Finn is kind of getting online, is able to make some of those plays. Hopefully we'll see a little bit more action, but fight under the tower. Techno JJ taking some damage.
Yeah, currently Mouz are doing their best just to try and clear the wave. If Techno JJ can light that goop, that's a lot of damage the turret's going to take, and Fnatic likely to try and take this turret just now. Turret goes down, but here comes their counter engage from Mouz. popping that fountain, and a lot of burst goes on to Palmatoro. That's the on-hit effect that I'm the Doom and Tricky can kind of supply with those double tension bow end as well. Oh, TechnoJJ finds a snipe onto Justman, and the Dragon's Breath is going to dissuade Mouz from sticking around. Very unfortunate for Mouz to lose their captain in such a way. It means they can't continue the aggression, and now going to be forced to just try and steal as many jungle camps and back away.
Yeah, Justman opened that up with a really great impale to set up that first kill, but a nice fadeaway Spitfire from Scarf is going to pick that one up. And for the moment, wait, is that a second tornado trigger? What is Tricky doing?
It is. Double tornado trigger, looking for a massive amount of attack speed, as well as having a bit of crit as well. A very intriguing build coming out of Tricky, something I've not seen before.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, who knows what you can do with a Vox in 2.8? Might as well try pretty much anything. And, you know, that much attack speed is going to allow for Tricky to really showcase mechanics to the highest degree.
Yeah, no, tension bow plus the double tornado trigger offers a huge amount of attack speed. So Tricky going to be able to output a lot as far as that is concerned. They're currently looking to take the gold mine away, but it does get stolen over, secured by Mouz. Netelet can't find the last hit, and that's a huge gold payout going over to Mouz. 400 now increased on update 2.8, and it puts him in the gold lead by 1,000.
Yeah, Netelet definitely like the attempt there, but not going to be easy to be able to steal that one away. And so for the moment, Fnatic has been looking for these major plays, and Mouz has been willing to kind of let them engage off of that. I feel like I'm the Doom just hasn't really been able to get those chase down moments, really find those open team fights that I think he wants. And I don't really think we've seen whether or not the burst combo is, you know, is really there for Mouz, which is kind of what it seemed like their builds were looking for.
So we're at this 11-minute mark. Mouz have got this interesting build on Tricky. We're seeing a on-hit effect build for I'm the Doom. Currently building towards some defensives as TechnoJJ is getting pretty close to hitting his 4th CP damage item and is going to be the main damage output for Fnatic. Hitting this point where I wonder kind of the win conditions of Mouz, what time their composition kind of loses out on power, if it's going to be able to continue to be threatening enough towards Fnatic at all stages of this game.
I'm already be a little bit worried because Palmatoro's picked up the Poison Shiv. So, you know, with the reduced sustain in 2.8, the value of Immortal... Oh, that forced a chord.
Yeah, great block comes out. The Crucible as well. It's going to be a re-engage. TechnoJJ is rooted up, knocked away. Oh, Justman, can they find the kill? It's going to be Palmatoro falling now, looking for TechnoJJ, but Justman is going to lead the charge, looking for an impale. He hits and he scores. It's 2 for Mouz. Netelet under the turret knows he's dead and will give up the ace to Mouz. And now they can secure their first turret of the game.
Now that is what Mouz has been looking for, that fight on the run, that initial bit of burst onto a single target. And I mean, at this point, the moment that Justman actually locks anything down with an Impale or a Githian wall, I'm pretty sure that Tricky is just going to shred through whatever target that is. Yeah, and it's just like, that is kind of, I think, where Mouz has been looking to find these fights, and they've just never been able to get Fnatic to actually kind of run away from them, because when you're on the run up against, you know, Fortress, he's just going to be able to chase you down very, very easily. Tricky does a really good job of chasing on the Vox. Justman can kind of land those impales when people are on the run and not really cutting back and forth. It's really just a perfect team fight for Mouz, and maybe now they can kind of get the momentum.
It is going to be a heavy steal picked up for Tricky, which means he can either go towards a breaking point or that Sorrow Blade, like you mentioned. My money's on the breaking point. You've gone for the Sorrow Blade. I guess we're going to find out which caster is more dominant here, Source, in their game knowledge. A bit of banter between us, but currently
This is an unfair challenge.
I think it's fairly fair. You've made your choice, I've made mine, but it's working. That's the main thing. Is Tricky's unconventional build here is working.
I don't think they've been able to really pressure Tricky, but Ingo Justman.
Yeah, are not able to find the steal. It is going to be Fnatic with the gold payout. Pops the wall treads, does Netelet, and they're all going to escape away. Mouz knowing that there's real no chase here. In 2.8, the Crystal Sentry being changed so that it offers a slow when it auto-attacks, makes things very difficult for a team to really dive on too deep. Then Mouz just going to pressure the lane by pushing the lane in.
Yeah, so I figured that Palmatoro might be able to get some of that value in those duels. Has the Astra's Pauldron, so is looking to get on top of Tricky and really shut him down. But he hasn't really been able to get deep enough into the fight, and there have been too many reflex blocks onto pretty much all of the CC coming out of Fnatic. That really, once they use the From Hell's Heart and the Forced Accord, they're pretty much looking to have already gotten in on the fight. He's picked up the Poison Shift. He wants to stand there and fight and get through all of that sustain, make it so that Tricky isn't going to be healed up and all the damage is going to stick. But until they actually get, I want to say, a really good flank or manage to kind of stutter out the From Hell's Heart and Forced Accord, I don't think they're going to actually be able to land that heavy engagement.
And the real good thing for Tricky here is Netelet gets engaged upon, slowed down by the Impale. He's going to continue chasing on forward, a huge 3-man quibble, but he's just straight up dead. That's an easy kill for Mouz. One of the huge things that this build offers for Tricky is that there's very little defense. Techno JJ's gone towards a 4 CP damage item build. Now he's building armor, but he's not going to have a reflex block, which means that he's vulnerable to Just Man's Impales, vulnerable to the Giffian Wars, and that's just huge for Mouz that they've kind of pigeonholed Techno JJ's ability to avoid the CC by forcing him into armor with this double Tornado Trigger build. It is a breaking point picked up. Tricky looking to try and stack on up. One of those things is that you can get the Sorrow Blade and you have immediate effect, or you get a breaking point. If you can stack it up, the breaking point, then it's more effective than a Sorrow Blade once it gets to the higher stacks.
Yeah, and at this point, they've been able to kind of put that pressure on to Netelet, and it's a Finn, easy target to be able to put some breaking point stacks onto. And Techno JJ just hasn't been able to set up and kind of, not exactly siege, but really get the poke value out of Scarf. Hasn't been able to play in that kind of nice mid-range where Scarf really excels, just a little bit out, almost that long range, but is able to just get down lots and lots of Spitfires. So from the moment, unfortunate Crystal Sentry, and that was a great Crucible.
Yeah, fantastic by Just Man. Able to block them all up. There is no echo on Netelet, so that forced Accord on a pretty hefty cooldown. Kraken able to break open the base here. Now Mouz going to actually just fall back. Too risky to fight for the second turret. Attack of the Pack may just put enough threat towards Fnatic, but seemingly they're going to just look to focus down the Kraken instead and steal away the backs here for Mouz.
Yeah, and it's also a double Crucible out from Mouz, so they're really ready to just shut down. I don't actually think Force Accord is going to land unless Netelet isn't going for an Echo. So maybe if there was an Echo in there, they could bait through one from Hell's Heart, get out another Force Accord, and maybe make something happen there. But for the moment, it just kind of feels like Fnatic has been stalled out. They're looking for the plays, but nothing's really connecting.
So because of this high damage build that Tricky has, once he gets stacked up on the breaking point, and the double Tornado Trigger with a crit should be able to allow him to stack up quite quickly. I'm the Doom has decided he doesn't need much damage, has opted in for a null wave gauntlet, which means that he can try to silence Netelet and prevent him from using one of his 4 activatable items. So a very intriguing build here for I'm the Doom, who's really just looking for that on-hit first auto attack onto Techno JJ so he can output damage, and then kind of falling into a bit more of a supportive jungler role.
Yeah, and that null wave gauntlet is going to start to affect how these team fights go, long term. If you're actually taking the fountain out of play, if that's just not going off in the middle of the team fight, there goes pretty much all of Scarf's sustain. Hasn't even harvest for sure, but that needs to happen over the course of long over the course of a fight. Mouz is not allowing for fights to go more than 4 or 5 seconds before somebody goes down.
And the other thing for Mouz is they just focus Netelet down before he even gets the chance to fountain himself. So there's a lot of things that Mouz can really be looking to do. Another Crucible blocks up the Forced Accord. They can stack up if they want on towards Netelet and then turn towards the more squishier Techno JJ. Get those breaking point stacks right up. Mouz right now controlling the pace of this game. Just have to see if they can continue to do so. It's going to be a jump on towards Netelet. Does the null wave come out? No, it hasn't quite yet. It is going to be Fnatic backing away, but the Dragon's Breath comes out. Huge Giffian Wall stops it up, but it is Tricky currently knocked on up, stunned up, trying to escape. Fountain heals him, and it's already going wrong for Mouz. They've lost their captain. Justman is dead. Tricky now looking to try and escape. Techno JJ dodges out the Spitfire, dodges out the Goop. He's going to turn on to Techno JJ, but I think he's just straight up dead. He is, and that means that only I'm the Doom is left. The Kraken is sitting there for Fnatic to take, and this is going to be a turning point of the game.
Yeah, and they finally managed to get the fight to stop for just 5 seconds, or for a moment or so. The fight kind of slowed down, and Tetsulet was able to get out all that 4 to 5 health off of the Polite Company. And just, I think from there, the fact that Palmatoro or Tetsulet didn't get bursted, the fact that the wait for it was already on cooldown from the previous, kind of poke war, I think that kind of allowed Palmatoro to really get in there and actually survive through the team fight and output the damage that a Kroll can.
Well, a bit of a turning point indeed. This 19.5-minute mark. Fnatic now looking to push on in with the Kraken. Have to see how Mouz can turn the tides. Their Fountain just waiting to be off cooldown. Double Fountain, in fact, I'm the Doom has one as well. And a Crucible. He has gone a double support setup here for Mouz. Very uncharacteristic of I'm the Doom, but perhaps if they can just keep Tricky alive, they feel it's worthwhile. This Kraken, down to half HP, the first turret it's encountered will fall and will explode, doing a bit of damage to the Kraken as well. Fnatic going to look to continue to push in, but wary that this composition from Mouz can just engage at the flick of a switch. So going to be very careful about how they do proceed. 3 broken myth stacks on Techno JJ, not really enough for Fnatic to force a fight. The forced accord not up for another 14 seconds either, meaning that Fnatic can't really pull the switch either. And that's just going to be the Kraken taken on down, only 1 turret secured, so a net gold lead over towards Mouz.
Yeah, everything from Mouz's composition is showing more and more how much faith we're putting in Tricky and this build, because Justman has gone into an Echo on a Lance, which isn't, insane, but it's not very slot efficient. It's really going to be there for the double Githian wall for that second impale as a follow-up. Everything is there to set things up so that Tricky has all the space to maneuver and pick off targets, and maybe that double Githian wall to try and, not crawl back, and then he goes in again and not crawl back again after, Dead Man's Rush. Like, all of those mechanics are there to just keep Tricky alive and let Tricky shine.
Yeah, for sure. We'll have to see how it does play out. Echo becoming a major part of a lot of captains' builds. Nettolet would want one of himself, but he can't afford it. Instead, looking like he's going towards a null wave of his own to try and silence up maybe I'm the Doom or a Just Man. Mouz able to force the recalls out of Fnatic, but not all of them have been completed just yet. It is Techno JJ last to the base. Fnatic now going to meet Mouz. Forced accord blocked up. Just Man going to avoid being pulled into an oblivion of the Fnatic team. It looks like they should just be able to take down this Crystal Sentry before Fnatic can even get there. Yeah, it is going to fall. Eliminated at the 22-minute mark here. Mouz just taking away everything they can, waiting for this Kraken to respawn.
I really like that out of Mouz. They pull all of Fnatic back, and actually, for a moment, it looked like Fnatic thought it was a bait, that they were just going to push the wave and wouldn't actually consider stepping into their base, and that kind of forced Fnatic to delay the recalls a little bit, but it really just moves Fnatic around the board. It keeps things, in the hands of Mouz, plays things at their pace, and here we go.
Ooh, another engage. Techno JJ's in a bad spot, stunned up, silence, he's in so much trouble, but a huge stun onto Tricky. May just be able to turn the fight. Looks like Techno JJ may go down. Yes, it does, but can Tricky get away from Palmatoro? Looks like he will be able to. Tricky will be able to finish off the kill, and it's 2 to Mouz, but the 2 most crucial members of the team. The damage output is only Nettolet to defend the base. A huge gold lead, 8,000 for Mouz at this 23-minute mark, and they're going to look to push on in, take down these turrets, and with Tricky's crit build, they should be able to take them down fairly quickly as well. No minion wave, Nettolet's preventing it from crashing into the turrets, but Just Man will tank it on up, and Tricky should be able to finish the job off. 18 seconds on Techno JJ, and it just seems like an eternity for Mouz as the Vein Crystal turrets fall. The Vein Crystal falls as well, and Mouz will take the first game of the Vainglory8 autumn season.
A great final team fight out of Mouz. You saw 8 activated items on cooldown for Just Man and I Am the Doom, using everything to keep Tricky alive, and Tricky just performed.
And that is the name of the game for Tricky. Will he be able to perform? Araki Zoro says that he's going to perform online, and that's going to be Mouz's secret weapon. It's the old team secret roster that we saw from London's Vainglory8 performing here in autumn. Very exciting for sure. Let's see what the desk has to make this fairly unconventional Mouz composition.
fairly unconventional composition, fairly unconventional build as well coming out from Tricky. We said he was going to be the one to watch. He definitely was in this game. Coming in with the Fox, double tornado, trigger, breaking point, and attention bow. That seems like a weird concoction to come in with.
It is a really weird build, but what's so great about it is that it synergizes so well with the Fortress because you have so much attack speed to apply the hits to trigger the activation from Fortress bleeds. The thing about this build is that one, it overestimates on the attack speed that you can't get the most efficiency out of it, and two, it doesn't have a lot of early game strength until you get the crit up with the second tornado trigger.
You also just don't really have the base damage, which is something that you have to be wary of when you're trying to siege or take the turrets down, but obviously in the team fights, it's exceptionally strong. And I just want to clarify with what you were saying about the attack speed. So what it is, there's so much attack speed in this build that you actually can't physically use
cap out
all of the attack speed. Like there's a cap on the animation speed that you can't use all the attack speed. So it's a very situational build, I would say, but obviously in this situation it worked out well.
And you can certainly rack up those breaking point stacks incredibly quickly. Let's take a look at some of the situations that happened in that game. Obviously Mouz took control of the game early. Fnatic did have somewhat of a comeback though, but this was one of the very early game fights where Mouz really started to take control of the game.
Yeah, and you can see they're just focusing one target. This one was Palmatoro just taking him down. This was before the Scarf was strong enough to be the massive threat. So they focus on the Krull, who is there to be the early game presence for Fnatic. Mouse would just take him out, and then in the late game, they just switch targets really nicely.
And Fnatic did so great early game because they kept their distance. They played to their win condition. When Finn got his level 6, they got a pull, they got first blood. But then it seems like they forgot what they needed to do to win, and they started getting too close. And when they did that, Fortress was able to engage, and Mouz Sports were able to just kill any targets that was in front of them.
Let's take a look at the fight that went actually well for Fnatic, where they started to come back into things later on in the game. It was a fight over Kraken, and we saw that, you know, this Scarf can have terrifying power if you can survive during the fights.
Yeah, and they get those stacks built up on the Broken Myth. You can see 3, 4, 5 stacks coming through before the Dragon's Breath happens. It does get stunned up immediately, but by that point, they're already so low on the side of Mouz Sports.
And this is what I mean, keeping their distance. You saw their Scarf positioning was so perfect. He was on the very far end of the team fight, was able to just get his Broken Myth stacks, deal the damage, not be too close to get bursted down, and that's exactly what Fnatic needed to do, and I think they forgot to do it later on when they lost the last team fight.
Yeah, and we'll take a look at that last team fight next. This is where Mouz kind of regained control of the situation. Honestly, after that fight there, when they were pushing with Kraken, it looked like it could have been a Fnatic game, but this team fight absolutely sealed the deal.
Yeah, and this one, the thing I really liked about the Mouz Sports side in this fight was their usage of all of these activatables. They had 2 fountains, 2 crucibles, an extra Aegis, an Echo, a Null Wave Gauntlet. It was just so many different things to be activated in the fight.
And I want to talk about the Null Wave Gauntlet a little bit. It's very unconventional to see it coming from the jungler, but why it's so awesome is that when they engaged, they applied the Null Wave Gauntlet on Finn. He wasn't able to use his War Treads to disengage, and that allowed Mouz Sports to close the gap and keep the team fight in front of them, where Vox can just deal them the insane amount of damage that he could.
And you can see the damage coming through because towards the later stages of that fight had 18 breaking point stacks just chunking through health bars. Obviously, this is what we were talking about earlier. When you're not fighting against heroes, you don't get those stacks, and your damage isn't that consistent sieging-wise, but if you can just win the team fight beforehand, that doesn't really matter too much.
You can take all the time you want if your opponents are dead.
Exactly. Death is the best CC, I believe is the phrase. But phenomenal game coming out from Mouz to start things off in this series. Tricky, as we mentioned, with a kind of unconventional build, but certainly a strong build when it comes to fighting out once you get to that full item part. There seems to be like a huge power spike for that Vox where you can just dish out crazy damage in those fights. And I mean, was there something that Fnatic needed to do to try and shut down that build? Would maybe, can you just like Atlas him and that deals with him in the fights, or is it more complicated than that?
I mean, Atlas would be great against that build because it relies so heavily on the insane amount of attack speed it has, but it's not so much about shutting down that build as much as it is keeping your distance away from Vox. And every time we saw Fnatic do that, they won the team fight. Every time they forgot to do it, they got too close, they lost the team fight.
Okay, so now looking towards the next game in the series, How do you draft around this? Because I don't think Fnatic were expecting this to come out from Mouse Sports. I wasn't expecting this to come out from Mouse Sports. Where do you go coming into this next draft? Because obviously they're going to swap sides on the draft as well.
Yeah, I'd like to see them move away from the Finn pick. A lot of teams have been putting this big priority on Finn, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. You know, especially so many of these compositions are looking to stay at range, and Finn doesn't work well at range. You have to be close. He tries to pull people into you. Like, that's not what you want to be doing. And it also just allows opponents to build up these stacks so heavily. He doesn't have the mobility to really provide enough utility to the team that I want to see teams kind of move away from this pick for now.
I mean, do you agree with that?
I do agree, and that's actually something worth mentioning. This last game, Finn pulls. If Mouse Sports at any time let that pull get through and then block the Quibble afterwards, they would have been able to close the gap. I actually think it was a mistake from Fnatic trying to pull every time in the team fight, because that's just going to bring Vox closer to your Scarf, which is something that you don't want to do. I do want them to move away from the Finn, but most importantly for Habs, get a character that's a little bit more comfortable for Titno JJ, not the Scarf.
So I want to talk a little bit about the Fortress pick as well, because last season we saw Fortress a few times, but it was always in the captain role. Now, we've been talking about how they need to be more aggressive, more proactive in the early game. Fortress jungle is definitely an aggressive, proactive jungler. Is this something that we're going to start to see be a staple meta pick, perhaps?
It's something we could definitely see become more and more frequent. I don't know if it's going to be the strongest jungler, because things like the Kashka can still deal with it, Glaive can still deal with it. You have a few options that can out-duel a Fortress early on and take advantage of that situation. But when you're trying to get an attack speed focused hero with you, Fortress works so well because of those bleed procs.
It does work really great, and the reason why it worked so great is because Fnatic didn't have a comp that could deal with Fortress early on to shut him down before he's killed. I actually think Mouse Sports could have played even more aggressive early game because they went for the double tension bow build. I don't think they did a great job during that part of the game, but I think they did a great job later on when they closed the gaps and managed to get the engagements that they needed.
So maybe could have exploited that a little bit further.
Yeah.
I want to talk a bit more about I'm the Doom on that Fortress, because one of the things we mentioned when we were talking about Tricky is that he needed to pull aggro away from I'm the Doom, be a threat himself. I feel like this game, that was absolutely the case. Vox was the focus of everything during the game.
Definitely, and that's when we see I'm the Doom shines. That's what I've always thought of him. He's a player that can stably perform when he's not being focused, when he doesn't have too much pressure on him. And Tricky is doing exactly the job we said he could do, and it's working good for Mouse Sports.
Yeah, it definitely felt like this was kind of classic Fnatic across this game as well, because it was like the later in the game it got, the more it felt like Fnatic were able to get on top of things. This is some B-roll of I'm the Doom, who, he has been a phenomenal player across the course of last season. This is his Kestrel gameplay. Everyone knows him for his historic Kestrel performance.
And that's something that worth noting. Kestrel was available that draft, but they chose not to go for it. So is this a character that they're not looking to use at all this update?
I think it's more that they don't want to show those cards right off the bat. I mean, this is a team last season we questioned, what is I'm the Doom's hero pool going to be able to keep up with the meta? And that it was answered last season that yes, he vastly expanded his hero pool. I think they're just trying to showcase now even more so that you cannot focus on his hero pool. And then once teams start to adjust to that and realize, okay, there's nothing we can do to try and make I'm the Doom uncomfortable, then he starts to go into those picks that he's even stronger on.
And it starts to go back to what we were saying earlier on as well. These teams, if they want to be one of the best teams in their region, if they want to look good when they get to the world stage, you've got to be able to adapt. You can't just be a team that rests on your laurels and relies on these comfort picks. You have to be able to play what you think is strong in the meta, not just what you're personally good at. And clearly Mouse showing that that's working for game one. I don't want to make any too sweeping statements. We have only seen one game of this series, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. Fnatic definitely have a chance to come back into things, but I'm curious what you guys think about the draft for Fnatic coming into game number 2 now. Do they have to go for something much more aggressive in the early game to kind of go toe-to-toe with Mouse early on?
I mean, if Mouse Sports goes for another character that can do really well later on when it scales, and they need to be shut down, that's what I would like to see Fnatic do. Get an early game character, get an early game composition to go in, shut them down. Palmator is an incredibly strong jungler and can get in there and out-duel I'm the Doom. Give him the opportunity to do that.
So give them the opportunity to step up and outplay mechanically. I mean, that was one of the things we were talking about last season, Bacon, was the fact that Palmatore was gradually becoming more and more aggressive of a player, more of a proactive player. He was kind of the spearhead, if you will, for Fnatic in the early game, and maybe that's what we need to see from him in this game.
Yeah, it's what I would really love to see from him. Like, I want to see these junglers make plays. We talked about in the pre-show that the play around the middle of the map on the first rotation is going to be absolutely integral. There was nothing on the first rotation. Like, Fnatic just gave the Elder Treant to Mousesports on the first rotation. They took it on the second rotation after things had kind of settled down a bit, but make those aggressive plays. Show that you are a force to be reckoned with in the early game from the start. It's so important to get that early advantage.
All right, well, it's time to get into game number 2 and kick this draft off. Now, Mousesports going to be on the A side, Fnatic on the B side. We'll see how this one's going to change things up coming
Teams
on
should
in.
be swapped.
I believe, yeah, that they should be on the other side of the draft. This time it's going to be Catherine taken away as well as Lance, and then Grace, the first lock. I feel like Grace has never been a good thing to allow through the bounds.
Grace is such a strong character because it just opens up so many different things that you can do with her. She's strong early game, she's strong late game, she can dive, she can peel and be the backline roamer that you need to continue sustaining your carries. She's too strong to give away to an opponent.
And especially when we're talking about this aggressive meta, you can't afford to let that heal through because they can just be so aggressive with very little punishment.
All right, well, they're going to go for the Finn on the side of Mousesports. I still don't understand it. I have yet to see it be like a really dominant pick in challengers where it's been focused, or here in the first game. It's yet to be proven to me that it's worthy of this heavy emphasis, especially when Lyra is available against the Grace. Like, it makes no sense to me to not take Lyra in this situation.
This is also the second time we see the team on B side banning Blackfeather on the second rotation. I wonder if this is an internal scrim type of thing, a character that's been rising and just shown to be really strong that the teams don't want to go up against. Celeste ban comes through. I think this is targeted obviously at Tricky. It's one of his strongest characters too, so it's taking it away from them, and it combines really well with Finn. That's a really strong duo that you don't want to go up against, so I like this ban from Fnatic.
Yeah, I like the point you make there about kind of the scrim meta coming out. We see the Blackfeather ban like you mentioned. There's definitely... These teams have had a couple of weeks on 2.8 to actually practice and scrim with each other, so the meta will have developed. They already know what's strong, what they want to be going with, and the Blackfeather ban going to be an example of that. Now Vox going to be picked up for Mousesports, so that's going to be going into the hands of Tricky once again.
And the Vox can work pretty well with the Finn because you'll be able to pull targets in to Vox's range. Obviously, the biggest struggle of Vox is the fact that he has a fairly short attack range for these ranged carries. So now Fnatic, I mean, they can just go with the Scarf or even the Idris. I would love to see Idris in this composition just because Idris Grace is still to this day one of my favorite duos to run. You have that dive in and immediately just throw down the heal and give him that holy shield to keep him safe.
And that's what Grace does in draft. It allows so many different combinations to come through depending on the team's preference. Adagio is one thing that you can combine with the Grace that's very strong, especially with the Glaive. But this is very interesting. It's a Glaive lane with a Koshka jungle. This is an incredibly aggressive early game and mid game composition. And I think it's going to work actually very good against the Finn that's very immobile. Koshka is going to be invading. Glaive is going to be putting a lot of pressure on lane. Where is Finn going to be? He can't go in between both constantly.
I mean, you mentioned earlier on in the pre-show that we were going to see more Glaive, more Koshka. I don't think we necessarily meant at the same time, but Fnatic, we said they need to be more aggressive. This is absolutely how you do it.
A very aggressive composition, but also a risky composition because it is that triple melee. So now there is a chance here for Mousesports to pick up the Rhyme, which is the triple melee counter. Like, we almost only see Rhyme come out when it is a triple melee situation. This is going to be tough for Fnatic. Obviously, they have a ton of mobility advantage, but once they get onto a target, as long as Finn and Rhyme stick near the Vox, all of a sudden they go in, they try and take the Vox down. You got Quibbles, you have
Yep.
the Spears, you have Valkyrie. Like, so many different things are all just focused in one area for the side of Mouse Sports.
And once again, we're going to see the entire Mouse Sports kind of lineup focused on Tricky. He's the one that everyone has to be looking at during these fights. He's going to be kiting around on that Vox, trying to get the damage out, trying to build up those breaking point stacks. Now, let's talk about this Fnatic roster and what they actually have to do here, because it would seem to me like right from the word go, they need to be in the enemy jungle forcing the issue.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
If they allow the game to scale a little bit and allow Rhyme to get to level 8, Finn to get to level 8 where his Quibble would be stunning, they would not do great. I personally don't think. They need to get in the enemy jungle, apply a lot of pressure early on, get advantages, try to snowball the game a little bit. If Glaive and Koshka get rolling, even though Rhyme is great against triple melee, he's not going to be tanky enough to sustain. They're just going to blow him up, and that's what Fnatic needs to do.
All right, so maybe later on in the fights, instead of trying to chase out the Vox, you just kill the Rhyme before he can actually sustain through things. Now, on the other side of things, how do you deal with that if you're... Or in fact, we don't have time. We've got to get on into this game. Make sure to get in touch with us on Twitter. Let us know who you want to win this one using the hashtag Vainglory8 and use the hashtags for your teams as well. It's time to get into Game 2 and see whether Fnatic can even things up or whether Mouse are going to take this one 2-0. Let's head onto the Halcyon Fold and get into the second game of the season.
All right, so here we go. It is going to be the second game of this series. Going to be Mouse pulling out a Rhyme against this triple melee composition. Very well placed, I think, by Mouse. A little bit of confusion as Mouse were drafting on B side, but are playing on A side. Admins are aware of this, not entirely sure what's going to happen, but now we'll cast it like it's all normal. Fnatic not quite able to get the steal, but TennoJJ does take away a healing tree, and pretty huge for Fnatic there, Source.
Yeah, nice bit of early jungle aggression, and composition-wise, I'm just looking at Fnatic, and all I see is dive, dive, dive. Like, the way that composition is going to need to be played and how much pressure they're going to have to put on Tricky within the first few minutes. They need to find that level 2 spike, and I want to say they need to get a gank in the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think you're right there, and you can see that Fnatic are moving up through the mustache bush to do just that. Palmatora leads the charge. Tricky takes half his health and damage. Fortified health does come out just at the right time to prevent him from taking any more. That's a huge burst of damage, and as soon as Palmatora has his jump up again, I assume they're just going to go straight on in. Yes, they do. Tricky dies. First blood over to Fnatic once more. Justman going to take a bit of burst in the process, and I'm the Doom pretty much late to the party. Roams up, but now knows that he has to protect his jungle against Palmatora. Exactly what he's moving in to do.
Yep, step 1 complete of their 3-step plan to win. It's gank, gank, and then probably gank a 3rd time. The amount of pressure they're going to need to put in early is going to be huge, but that's a good start for them. Palmatora getting away a little bit of that jungle steal, getting that back camp is pretty good, especially golden experience-wise with all of the changes, and so now picks up some extra crystal bits, has those boots, should be able to easily engage, and I'd be careful if I were Justman, because although it's a Finn, it's going to be a little while before Finn gets tanky enough to survive, and that's just an easy target for Koshka to pick off.
Certainly is. Already a lot of early aggression has netted Fnatic a 1,000 gold lead here, and of course they're going to be looking to continue that. Palmatora making his way up to lane. TennoJJ forced to afterburn, but here comes Palmatora, and Justman is just so far up. Pops his healing flask, but he is going to be going down anyway. I'm the Doom as well, looking like he's going to fall as well as Palmatora. Looks to try and die, but the fortified health keeps him alive.
Yep, and we're actually going to be sending this back to the analysts. We are going to be going into a remake, guys, so let's throw this back to Munchables at the desk.
Thank you very much, guys. So the team's currently on the wrong side of the map right now, so we may be remaking the game. We're just going to come and talk about what's been happening in the game so far, because things started off well for Fnatic. I mean, we said they needed to be aggressive, be proactive. That's exactly what they've done in that early game so far.
Yeah, they are being aggressive, and here's the thing. Mousesport's composition actually can hold off Fnatic's composition if there are S3 in the jungle. If it's a 3v3, Finn, Rhyme, Vox is a great dueling composition, but the weakness to it is that it has little mobility. So Fnatic needs to not panic if Mousesports are being proactive in their rotations. They just need to apply pressure both in lane and jungle at the same time so that they create 2 points of pressure that Finn needs to be in either one of, and if he can't decide, quick enough, then they can find an advantage. And if they don't get the advantage early on, if once comes mid-game, once Koshka picks up her Aftershock and Glaive gets his first item, then they can start to apply even more pressure and get advantages.
Yeah, so a lot of it is kind of Fnatic trying to force Mouz to split up and try and pick them apart, go for like individual 1v1s, 2v2s, as opposed to that whole team fight. But how do you make that happen? Is it just a matter of splitting up yourself so that they have to do the same?
Exactly, yep. You put some pressure in the lane, just a little bit of pressure, just enough to maybe try and warrant a rotation up, and then immediately use your movement speed. You have Glaive and Koshka who can move so much faster than Finn and Rhyme can, that once they have to try and answer that lane movement, you just duck down into the jungle. Now they have to try and answer the jungle movement. Like it's very much in Fnatic's hands to force the issue. Mousesports cannot just try and react. Like, they have to be trying to predict where Fnatic is going to be, and at that point, it just becomes a guessing game.
So I want to play devil's advocate here, because obviously, on paper that works, right? But the situation, if Mouz just groups as a 3, like, let's say you're Fnatic and you've split into a 2 in a jungle and 1 in lane. What if Mouz just goes 3 in lane and just pushes hard? Because the turrets have been weakened now. Can they just pull that off?
I don't think they can, just because they have a Finn who's going to be very immobile going between jungle and lane. They can't move quickly enough to apply that pressure. Glaive can just clear the waves while Koshka tries to go into the jungle. And that's what I was going to say. I would like to see Fnatic start in a way where Grace goes and invades the jungle, Glaive starts in lane, pushing the wave in as fast as he can, and Koshka just starts her jungle, clears it fast so that she can apply pressure. And that way what you have created is lane is being pushed in, and your Koshka is soon going to be pushing into your jungle. Where do you go? Vox will have to go up to lane, and this is how you split Mousesports composition. And if they're not as 3, you can win the duels.
All right, well, we're gonna get back on into this game, so let me pass it once again to our casters for game number 2.
Thank you very much, Munchables. This is the official game 2. That was just a sneak peek of the aggression that Fnatic can output. Unfortunately, the sides were not switched before the game started. I'm waiting on an official ruling from our admin team, so I'm not going to say too much about that, but the remake has come through, and once I get an official ruling, I will offer more information as to exactly what's happened. But as you can see, Fnatic looking to repeat their success from the previous game. This time, however, Mouz wary to the exact rotation that Fnatic wanted to output, and were able to secure the entirety of their jungle.
Yeah, that strategy was player tested, caster approved, but wasn't going to work out a second time. Now looking to pressure up in the lane. Fnatic, it's a good concept, and in theory, if they can start setting up those same types of plays, Rhyme is slow, Finn is slow, they can possibly get some of the same similar effect. It's just not going to be as easy this time around since Mouz saw it coming, and it's going to take a little bit more time for that to ramp up.
All right, so essentially, because of an admin error, that's the official ruling. It's not the team's responsibilities, but we'll talk about it in a sec. Palmatoro dives, Tricky not quite able to find the kill, and he will be able to escape Tricky with his life. It is not the player's responsibility to switch sides during a game. That is down to our observing team, and unfortunately, that is where the error came through. So the sides have now been officially switched, as according to the official rules of the Vainglory8, that you switch sides between games, and we will resume as if the error hadn't occurred. So unfortunately for Fnatic, it means that their early game shenanigans have kind of been telegraphed to Mouz, and Mouz have kind of avoided the same errors as last time. In fact, I'm the Doom counter-jungling on this Rhyme and stealing away camps as he does so, and Techno JJ being pressured in lane.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Tricky didn't go down early, which gave them a bunch of space to move throughout the jungle, that, you know, lessened that lane pressure, has let I am the Doom kind of play Rhyme as he normally would, clear out some camps, maybe go for a counter jungle where necessary, but just not be under the same kind of pressure that Palmatoro had on him before. Also, Palmatoro, in the previous iteration of reality that was the start of this game, had gone into the back, had stolen those back camps, had at least a level on I am the Doom. So just that early aggression being stalled out is going to slow things down. And now we've hit that 3-minute mark I mentioned the first time around. We're going to see whether or not Fnatic can actually find the momentum, because I said they needed that just for the sake of being able to kind of hit their item power spikes and get ahead. Now it's going to take a little bit more finesse, and they really only have one great crowd control, which is going to be Afterburn. I mean, yes, Holy Nova, but you kind of have to set them one up.
Yeah, also Yummy Captain Frenzy will be coming online shortly, and that's another thing for Tricky to consider blocking. It's going to be very difficult, I think, for Tricky to block all of this CC. If the Yummy Captain Frenzy is blocked, then it opens up the Afterburn and Holy Nova. Currently, Palmatoro and I'm the Doom just playing games here as they chase each other around the jungle. It was I'm the Doom invading, now it's Palmatoro in his jungle. Palmatoro might be in a bit of trouble. Nope, I'm the Doom not actually going to contest Palmatoro in his jungle, and Tricky just looking for the ambient gold. In 2.8, the jungle camps were changed here, Source, which means that you get more ambient gold. So we're going back to this this kind of double jungle that we used to see during spring often, where the laner will head on down to the jungle just to soak up some ambient gold and progress their build further.
Yeah, and I'm the Doom, you know, opting to farm instead of chase. I mean, you know, chasing a Akashka is never a particularly easy thing to do, but would rather get the farm. But now is in a little bit of enemy territory, runs into Palmatoro, is going to sprint away. And no action just yet, but both teams getting a reasonable amount of farm.
Yeah, you can look at the entirety of the Mouse roster, apart from Justman, who is Finn and has that unstoppable heroic perk. Reflex blocks have been purchased up, which means that they're going to be looking to avoid the Yummy Captain Frenzy. Huge route onto Techno JJ, but they're not quite able to find the Quibble to slow him down. Palmatoro hasn't hit level 6. I'm the Doom's counter jungling has been effective, stealing away experience from this kitty cat, meaning that Fnatic just don't have the power to contest Mouse at the moment, though Palmatoro does invade the jungle, is able to steal away, looks like 2 of these healing treants. We'll have to see if he's able to get the back one here very quickly with that heavy CP build that he's currently got in his inventory, and I'm the Doom has not been able to find him with the Valkyrie, so a wasted ultimate, fairly long cooldown as well.
Yeah, and Palmatoro, you know, with those 2 steals, gets a little bit of value and turns what was, you know, pretty much bad positioning into an advantage and gets that additional cooldown. So from the moment, there's, you know, a slight window where they may actually be able to find engagement on time, the Doom, and rightly so, and the Doom backs, wants to heal up fully, doesn't want to be caught out half health when there's a Koshka roaming through the jungle.
So currently, Mouse Sports weathering the storm that is this heavy melee dive composition from Fnatic. Although level 6 is about to be hit by the entirety of the Fnatic squad, would be fairly impactful. Palmatoro taking a bit of burst damage. It is going to be I'm the Doom looking to just get on in there and try and find a lot of damage. Palmatoro just dancing around. Hasn't finished an item yet, a tier 3. Has that. Looks like it's going to be a Shadow Glass coming out first for Palmatoro, which is kind of intriguing on this Koshka. Maybe going down towards a similar build that we've seen Tarkus go, which is the Shadow Glass Clockwork Broken Myth style. Both I'm the Doom and Palmatoro kind of have this gentleman's agreement at the moment, Source, where they just counter-invade each other's jungle, but I'm the Doom's taking it one step further and taking away the Crystal Sentry here at the 6.5 minute mark.
Yeah, Nuttallette is going to go into the jungle, find him, does not get the steal. No, I'm the Doom does get the steal away. Chill wins and roots him up a bit.
Certainly does, and Palmatoro moving into the lane can't quite find enough damage to pressure out Mouse. I'm the Doom, will he secure this? No, Palmatoro does, and that actually could put I'm the Doom in a bit of trouble here if Palmatoro and Techno JJ were to coordinate, but it's very difficult against 3. Oh, Valkyrie almost connects, but Techno JJ avoids it. They're looking to take down this turret here, and I don't think Techno JJ can stop them. Palmatoro is going to come from behind, looking for the flank. Maybe they're going to go for an engage here onto the Mouse squad. No, looks like Fnatic are wary of the choice to do so. I'm the Doom, very low, but the fountain comes out. That's going to be Palmatoro going down for first blood, and Techno JJ's been pulled in as well. A double kill for Tricky as Mouse turn that fight around. Nuttallette trying his best to push them backwards, but he's going to get slowed down, and Mouse are going to continue the chase onto this Grace, trying to slow him down. They should be able to find the kill here, and they do. It's 3 for Tricky at the beginning of the game, and a huge 3,000 gold lead for Mouse.
Another game where it starts very, very slow, and then all of a sudden Mouse are able to turn things on its head. And a lot of that came off of the way that flank was set up. Palmatoro was looking for the flank, but then kind of hesitated. They then remake the call, decide to engage. But Techno JJ is very, very low. The team's a little bit behind the play, and they almost managed to bring down I Am the Doom, but the fountain comes out, heals him just enough. Team alive, they finish Palmatoro, great force to core from Justman, and everything just turns from there.
Man, this is fantastic stuff from Mouse. Just tempered aggression, very calculated the damage they can take, and I'm the Doom's ability to counter invade Palmatoro here has been proving fairly successful. Palmatoro is going to finish up an aftershock, and Justman just walking up and facing up Techno JJ. Tricky though on the back line, silences up Palmatoro, but the Grace Heal going to come through, Divine Intervention. Tricky, can he heal enough is the question? Yes he can, and he will be able to escape, and now the re-engage going to come through from Mouz. Net2Let being chased on down, Techno JJ afterburn available in 6 seconds. Mouz doesn't look like they want to chase too deeply onto this. And look at Tricky's build here, completely changing up what Mouz want to do. It's Sora Blade Poison Shift picked up for Tricky, and then perhaps going to be finishing up with both defensive items. So the question is, does he go Breaking Point as his third, or a Bone Saw? It will be very interesting to find out.
Yeah, that poison shift is starting to become pretty key, and Techno JJ has picked one up as well. Both teams looking for that mortal wound, but the fact that Tricky had that, it cut down the healing of both the Fountain and the Divine Intervention from Net2Let, and that lack of healing really stopped Palmatoro from finishing the job, because Palmatoro was putting a lot of pressure onto Tricky. It looked really good. There was a polite company that kind of stopped the rest of the team from being able to follow up. But still, like, that little bit of that lack of healing, the changes that have come in 2.8, and I think the value you can get out of a poison shift is going to start to show. And I mean, Tricky changing a build will be, oh no, Palmatoro!
Oh, Palmatoro is in so much trouble here. The silence comes through. Silence is up Net2Let. Palmatoro very far away means there's no heal to come through. Huge Valkyrie locks up Techno JJ. He's going to get the Divine Intervention, but Mouz want to continue chasing on. A good Crucible saves Net2Let from being pulled in, but the root comes through and he is dead to all rights. Now it's going to be Techno JJ taken on down by Tricky. This guy is a living monster, 5-0-1, and he's going to take down the second life of the Crystal Sentry. At the moment, Palmatoro tanking up the turret. Will he go down? No, he's got the minion wave with him, going to help on out, and it looks like they should be able to secure this turret here, so a little bit of a gold respite for Fnatic, but it's Mouz calling all the shots.
Yeah, Palmatoro is able to, oh no,
he's in so much trouble.
You should have backed.
Yeah.
You should have backed. It looked so good for a moment.
Maybe not. I'm the Doom. Can he stop him? Justman's trying to get in position to find a Quibble to slow on down. Doesn't quite connect, but the Crystal Sentry gets involved. Polite company. This is just a fast kitty cat. Palmatoro is safe. He's going to escape with his life, and he's able to get a lot of gold as well. What is Net2Let doing is the real question. Fnatic seem lost in their macro play here, Source.
Yeah, I think Net2Let was looking for what little value could be gained. They knew where most of the enemy team was, and this isn't a great chasing team. We just saw I and the Doom get afterburned away, and what's Orion going to do to follow up onto that? Unless Justman is willing to commit the Force to Core, and you've got a Crucible on the Grace, and now the team fight is starting up again.
Yeah, it's going to be starting up. Let's see where this one goes. Net2Let diving on in, provides the Holy Shield with a Benediction. Mouz just going to continue moving forward. At the moment, Palmatoro just doing his own thing in the jungle, trying to secure his creeps, but he's going to come rushing forward to try and help his team protect their turret. Already down to half HP. Tricky, very confident to stand behind his front line here, that they can turn on Palmatoro, but that's a huge dive. Tricky taking a lot of switch, but a double root with the Valkyrie and a double kill for Tricky. Net2Let blocks up that Force Accord, but it's all too late, all too little, and it looks like Mouz are just going to move on in and take Net2Let down as well. That's an easy triple. A second for Tricky here. The turret will fall down. The ace minions as well. They're going to continue pushing here, Source.
Yeah, and Tricky has just been able to have... This didn't look like it was going to be as much of a, Tricky-centric composition. Tricky's just being allowed to maneuver throughout the fight, despite all of the pressure from Palmatoro to dive into the backline. I think that initial lack of gold, that starting counter jungler from I'm the Doom, impacted Palmatoro's build. You were saying it looked like he was going for a Shattered Glass. Well, that had to change. That switched into an Impulse and now a Broken Myth. So that lack of initial burst, we saw how close Palmatoro got to finishing some of those kills and getting Tricky down. And just like that small chain effect seems to have made it difficult for them to actually finish off Tricky, and now we're later into the game, Justman can defend him, and they're going to go for this turret, but I don't think Fnatic can do it.
Yeah, no, Tricky's already stacking up his Breaking Point up to 10 stacks, and Net2Let's dead. Techno JJ, there's no way he escapes from this either, and Tricky looking for a second kill. It will be sniped away by Justman. Palmatoro doing all he can to still waste some gold here, but Fnatic just move over towards, Mouz move over towards the gold mine and to get a huge 400 each gold payout will result in them going up another 1,200 gold in total. They're already 7,000 gold ahead, almost 8,000, so why not make it 9,000 at this point? Palmatoro, he's on the choke point turret doing very little damage, just tickling it. Fnatic are truly lost at the moment as to what to be doing in this game. They're so split and disjointed, and Mouz are just stealing away, executing so perfectly on this confusion.
Yeah, now Tricky's building more into those defensive items as the breaking point, and build-wise, as opposed to last game where it was all about building that insane attack speed and stacking things up and keeping this high pace of game. Tricky just needs to survive. If he survives, he's going to get full breaking point stacks. He's going to be dishing out massive amounts of damage. He doesn't need to get too scared, but that's going to be a good after room. Maybe they finally find him.
Yeah, they're going to find them. That's an easy kill for Mouz here. And Palmatoro and Netelet just looking to escape. Looks like Palmatoro will be allowed to backport. Netelet's already got away. Mouz have just truly taken over Fnatic here. It's not even a contest at this point here, the source. Mouz are just in the driver's seat and waiting to arrive at their destination, which would be a sweet 2-0 in the first week of the autumn Vainglory8.
Yeah, I mean, there's still potential. There is that comeback play. Palmatoro does do a lot of damage. Kashka can burst through, an individual target very, very well, but they just can't get on top of Tricky. Justman has done a really good job on this Finn of just, making it just difficult enough for Palmatoro to actually manage to connect that damage onto Tricky, and Tricky's just played a really, really solid game. This is a great showing for him.
Yeah, and they're looking for more here as they move into the lane. Fnatic kind of want to fight, but they're not going to be able to walk on in. Looks like they've split up as well, which is a bit of an issue. Palmatoro does dive towards Justman. TechnoJJ lurking across the wall, but he's pretty far away. Netelet just left to his own devices. The Crystal Sentry's been eliminated, so Mouz are free to just walk straight on into the base here. Palmatoro and TechnoJJ are running towards the choke point turret. That's not going to win you the game at this point. You need to defend your base. Mouz, they could just walk up to these Vayne Crystal turrets and pressure them, and it's exactly what they're going to do. They have the Rhyme, they have the Finn, they have so much tankiness, and Fnatic, they're just trying to backdoor, but they just don't have the damage to do so. This is disastrous for Fnatic. Mouz are just going to finish the game right here. A terrible call coming out of the team. Netelet will lose his life as a result of it. This is going to be the Vayne Crystal turret falling, the Vayne Crystal falling as well, and Mouz are going to take this game away unless they decide to focus kills instead of Vayne Crystals. They will win 13-0. Almost a perfect game from the Mouz team, and Fnatic lost to Swords.
Yeah, great play out of Mouz. I think Fnatic got flustered for that. Palmatoro kept looking for those backdoor plays to try and, make up for some of, the bad positioning or the individual pick. You can't do that all game. You have to find it.
Yeah, pretty incredible stuff from Mouz here. And the question is, where is Fnatic? Hopefully this won't be the story of their season. Either way, a 2-0 over to Mouz. Impressive stuff. Let's throw it back to our desk.
0-13, certainly an unlucky number if you're a Fnatic fan at home, as Mouz are going to take this series 2-0 in the end. And what a commanding victory in that second game as well, gentlemen. I mean, the way it ended as well, Fnatic trying to force a turret, and Mouz were just like, we don't care, we're just going to end the game.
You force a turret, we'll force your Vayne Crystal. Like, it's not an even trade. It was a very strange sequence of events to close that one out, but even going back to the beginning of this game, just very strange play from Fnatic. I mean, we talked about the fact that they need to be aggressive, like they need to be looking to apply pressure in the lane and the jungle simultaneously. They applied pressure nowhere at all. Like, they played super passively. It was very bizarre.
And then once we got to kind of about the 6:30-minute mark, we finally started to see teams fighting, and it was Mouz that were taking the advantages.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, the Mouzsports didn't lose any gold leads up to that point. This is the team fight that we were talking about, and you can see Glaive is already extremely low, and he's just pushed out. This is when they apply a lot of pressure and they get a lot of health away from the turret. They even take it, and this is the first step for Mouzsports to start scaling and get to their late game stage where they can win team fights against Fnatic really easily. And we can see Kashka going in alone. This is the story of this game. Fnatic not playing as a unit. They kept going in one person at a time, and you can't do that with this comp. This is a comp that's about going in on one target, bursting them down, killing them, and then moving on to the next one.
Yeah, it's all about, being the ones that are actually starting these plays, because that was Mouz being the proactive ones, being the ones that started things off. And then there was another fight later on where we saw some sneaky plays coming out from Palmatori trying to grab a turret for himself. He did manage to do it, but once again, it's a situation where Mouz take the advantage.
Yeah, this was actually, I think this was just Palmatori making the best of a bad situation. He kind of got caught out a little bit, face checking a brush and got dropped low, so the rest of the team ends up paying the price, but he gets out the backside and recognizes that the minion wave is pushed up and he has an opportunity to make at least something happen on the map. So I really do commend Palmatori for this play in particular of, just recognizing the situation, being able to say, okay, that's making the best of a bad situation, essentially, was what he was able to do there. And but unfortunately, if you're constantly making the best of a bad situation, it's still a bad situation to start with. And that was ultimately what ended up costing them.
Yeah, it was a silver lining, but it was still a huge black cloud over their heads. And I mean, we saw him take the turret there. We saw them try and do a similar thing later on in the game. It didn't